Every afternoon after school, this 5-year-old child disappeared. Her father decided to spy on her. He broke down in tears when he learned the unbelievable truth and saw whom his daughter was with every day. "I wish I'd known earlier," he cried. "I wish I had known sooner." The father later told local journalists that he still couldn't comprehend how his daughter had accomplished this for so long without being detected. "If I had noticed earlier, I would have intervened immediately. Where is she?" Carl's daughter had come home late from school every day for 4 days. Her school closed at 3:30, and she would come straight home and set the table with her father. She had always been a sweet girl who followed the rules. However, that week she left her father to set the table alone. Where did she go every day? Her father decided to follow her covertly. He saw who his kid saw every day and learned the unbelievable truth, which caused him to cry. Later, the father expressed his continuing confusion over how his daughter had managed to carry out this activity covertly for so long to the local media. "If I had noticed earlier, I would have intervened immediately." Carl wasn't worried for the first few days. After all, the girl always came home, although she was usually 15 hours late. Perhaps she was visiting a friend's house or playing in the schoolyard. But on the 5th day, Carl began to worry when she was more than 3 hours late. That week, he asked his daughter Emily why she was coming home late. But Emily was a smart girl, and she dismissed her father's questions carelessly, saying she had some work to do at school. However, Carl didn't believe her. Although he didn't believe his daughter's answers, he still trusted her innocence, so he decided to call her school the next day and found out the painful truth. "We were just about to call you, sir," said his daughter's teacher. When school was over, she and the other teachers realized that Emily was the last kid to leave the schoolyard, and she was often alone. Her teacher had witnessed that the little girl had looked particularly nervous the previous day and had hurried out of school. Carl was shocked as she didn't come home right away, and he felt she was lying about what she was doing after school. Emily's teacher confirmed the father's fears, and he thought it was best to execute his plan as soon as possible. The next day, Carl hid in the bushes outside the schoolyard. Emily stood alone in the garden. She looked nervous. "I'll be right behind her if she gets away from here," thought Carl. This thought, however, distracted Carl as his daughter was out of sight in the blink of an eye. The little girl was surprisingly fast, running from one street to the next. Carl was having trouble keeping up with her. After a 15-minute zigzag route, Emily and Carl, quietly following her closely, were away from the city streets. Asphalt had now given way to grass, and houses had been replaced by deciduous trees. His daughter paused for a moment at the entrance to the huge forest. She suspiciously looked around and then disappeared among the trees. By the time Carl reached the edge of the forest, Emily was already out of sight. It wasn't a coincidence that his daughter came to this forest, Carl thought. They had their own house at the end of the big forest. The 5 hectares of land on which Carl lived with his family had been his family's for almost 100 years, and where was his daughter going? Maybe she had lost her way. Besides their own, there was another house on the property, but no one had lived there for 50 years. The house belonged to his grandfather and grandmother, and now it stands abandoned. But the little girl's trip had ended in this house for some reason. Why did she come here? Emily slowly approached the old building. She was holding a large plastic bag in her right hand, obviously containing something heavy. "What is she doing here? Why is she lying to me about her coming here?" thought Carl. But as he approached the house, he experienced the fear of his life. Someone was waiting on the balcony. A mysterious person. Carl hid behind the house to see what his daughter was doing. He didn't have to wait long, because after a few minutes, Emily was at the door. The girl slammed her fist on the door, and then the mysterious person on the balcony disappeared. The door opened and Emily entered. Who is this mysterious person? What is he doing at home? And more importantly, what does he want from Emily? Carl didn't know how to intervene quickly. With the keys to the old building in his hand, he opened the back door as quietly as he could. He walked slowly inside, soon hearing his daughter talking to this mysterious person. It was a female voice. Carl leaned against the door jamb outside the room and tried to see what was going on inside. It was crowded. He heard many other footsteps, not just his daughter's and this strange woman's. Then Emily suddenly opened the door. Carl had a chance to turn the corner and disappear before his daughter left the room. She's probably going home now, Carl thought. He could follow his daughter again, but first he had to find out what she had to do with the mysterious woman in the house. He slammed the door open and was shocked to see the people in front of him. The room wasn't as empty as his grandfather and grandmother had left years ago. No family lived there now, and right around the corner stood the woman he was looking for. "What are you doing here?" The woman was stunned, and she tried to run away quickly, but Carl managed to stop her. "Now you're going to tell me what you're doing here and why you're secretly seeing my daughter every day." The startled woman burst into tears and sat back in her chair. She took a deep breath and began to tell Carl her sad story. "Had I known this ahead of time, I would have intervened immediately. Carl later told the press. The woman's story was so pathetic that Carl could not hold back his tears. The woman was quite old and said she came from Syria. She, her daughter, and 2 sons had fled the troubled area and found themselves in a refugee camp. The conditions were terrible, so she had to find help. I had decided to go out on the street and ask for help. Who knows, maybe someone good would be found to help us. She had walked the streets for days hoping someone would lend a helping hand, but no one helped. Then she met little Emily. My family is everything to me, and I try to give them the best of everything. The old woman had struggled to support herself and her entire family, but she soon ran out of food. Until she met Emily during recess. Emily had told him about the house on their plot and that they could live there safely. I've been living here for about a month, the woman explained. But we ran out of food because I had to share it with my daughter and grandchildren. Fortunately, dear Emily has decided to help us again. Last week, Emily visited the old woman and her family daily. She played games with the children and asked the family how they were. But when her food began to run out, the little girl could do nothing. Every day she took as much food as she could from the house and took it to the old woman's family. Not much, but enough to survive, the old woman explained. Hearing this heart-wrenching story, Carl burst into tears. He immediately ran home to talk to his daughter. Emily was sitting in the backyard chair when she got home. Carl ran to his daughter and hugged her tighter than he had ever hugged her. He told her that he had followed her and learned all about the old woman's family. It's okay, honey, but please don't keep any more secrets from me, okay? His worries that day had turned into great admiration and pride for his little girl, and when Carl told the story to his wife, Emily's family did something so incredible. The family decided to help the old woman named Alma and her family. Alma would be able to stay at the old house free of charge, and enough food would be given to the family each day for her, her daughter, and her grandchildren. But that's not all. Through a fundraising campaign, they managed to raise enough money to officially turn the house into a shelter for the underprivileged. Meanwhile, Emily and her family take care of around 20 people along with Alma. 5 of them even have their own business and home. All this happened because of the kindness in the little girl's heart.